Well, these really are pastels, but they look like coloring crayons until you add water. And that's when the magic happens. In this lesson, I'm going to be sharing with you why I love this product, Neocolor 2 water-soluble wax pastels. I use them so often, and sometimes I just want to feature them. So come on into the studio, and I'm going to create a beautiful underpainting using this amazing and fun product. And this lesson is more of a product review, but it is from a longer and larger lesson that's over on my Patreon page called Different Strokes. We're focusing on the technique of feathering. And over on my Patreon page, I'm sharing this month all kinds of different techniques for mark making with soft pastels. I'll share more about how to become part of my Patreon family a little bit later. So, like I said in the intro, these are water-soluble wax pastels. Now, that just seemed crazy to me when I first tried them, but they work on any water-friendly pastel surface. And for this painting, I used Luxe Archival Professional Sanded Paper. I love it. It's textural, so you get a lot of layers, but it's water-friendly. And I found a beautiful reference image over on unsplash.com. I'll have a link to this reference image in the description of this video. And again, I was focusing on the technique, the mark making technique of feathering, and I thought this reference image was fantastic for that. But again, for this YouTube Monet Cafe version, I'm just focusing on this wonderful product of the Neocolor wax pastels. And I'm doing a quick little sketch here. I'm keeping it super loose and gestural, and one of the reasons I picked this photo is it had a lot of grasses blowing in the wind, and that was kind of the focus of that Patreon lesson. And I'm going to be choosing an underpainting. If you've followed my channel for very long, you know I love creating underpaintings that have some fun color. And I have a system, I've got plenty of videos that share this, where I take the main colors of the image, which were yellow and green, I just pointed to, and I come down on the color wheel. It's called a complementary color, and I choose colors that are complements to the main color, which took me to these red-violet colors. Now, you may not have noticed, but on many color wheels, they have a little section to add white. And you can see it in this little section I'm pointing at right here. That just lightens it up. So I'm going to pick some colors of these Neocolor wax pastels that are in the red to red-violet family. And again, if you've never heard of an underpainting, what it's going to do is cause all of the greens and all of those yellows to really show up. So here's my fun little product, these Neocolor 2 water soluble. That's a long name, isn't it? But they literally look like coloring crayons. And you can see I've taken all of the labels off mine. I've broken them into little pieces. I like to work with them on their sides, kind of layering them. So I often break them into thirds and little segments about the size of half of my pinky. And so these are the colors I chose. This is kind of a pretty peachy color for the sky. I do have a darker one that I chose to go ahead and get in some of those dark values. Darker values are typically vertical elements in a scene, such as trees and foreground grasses. Anything that's growing tall usually is darker. And another thing an underpainting does, other than just lay down some complementary color that's going to make your main colors really just pop, is it creates a roadmap and a value study that's already established when you go to add your local color, which our local color just means the colors that you see in the reference image. So you see I got down more of that dark color. I got down some of these pretty reds. A fun thing's going to happen when I add water to the reds and that bluish color, which you'll see soon. The magic's about to happen when I add water. And now I have this color that's a little bit more of an orangey color for some of the distant grasses. And my strokes matter always when you're painting, but my brush strokes are really going to matter here. I kept saying I was going to add water. You could add water, but I'm actually using for this painting, I forgot, rubbing alcohol. It's 70% rubbing alcohol. You can get it at any drugstore. You see I'm just putting a decent amount in a jar and using some paper towels to control the flow. And a little brush that is a Princeton Art and Brush Company 4650. any large brush will work. I like using large brushes. And I just get a decent amount of the alcohol on my brush. And real quickly, why am I using alcohol? When I said I was using water, it dries faster. And I think it does make things flow a little bit better, but you could totally use water here. And I'm just, now I didn't have quite enough alcohol on my brush. So it does take a little bit of playing around to figure out how to control the amount of water or alcohol that you use. And I just constantly just dab it onto my paper towel. And I'm working in sections. I don't want to really contaminate the color too much. It's okay if it drips into different areas, as you'll see it do as I get closer to the foreground. But I also wanted to mention that when I have a decent amount of alcohol in the jar or the glass that I added, I don't have to clean out my brush a lot. The alcohol kind of does that for me, so it makes things a little faster. Now this is real time. I'm going to speed it up in a minute, but I wanted you to be able to see just real-time speed of how I'm working here. Again, I'm being a little careful. I don't want everything to drip at this point into each other, but near the foreground, I'm gonna get really fun and creative and let the drips happen. And I think you can see here how this color is really exploding when I add the water. And what's so fun about the Neocolor 2 pastels is that you can actually blend them together. You can mix colors. And I have a video over on my Amazon page. I'm an Amazon influencer, so I have my own shop. I'm going to put a link to that tutorial in the description of this video, so you can see all of the different ways that I use these Neocolor 2 wax pastels. And I'll also have a link just to the product. And I do get a little kickback if you buy it from the link at no extra charge to you. It doesn't cost you 1 penny more. So if you want to check out this product, you can purchase it from my link, and that would really help. And so here, let me speed this up so you can watch the magic happen. And here's where I'm working down further into the foreground of the painting. And I am really getting my strokes very gestural. But I think you'll also notice, like I said, they actually will blend together. So the blues that I added and some of those reds, remember in the upper part, I used more orange colors, but they blend. And what does blue and red make? It makes purple. So I'm getting some fun purple shadowy colors for some of those deep grasses that are in the foreground. So the main thing is just have some fun with this. And that's what an underpainting does. It creates a fun beginning for your painting. And if you like impressionistic paintings, then this is a great way to start. Swirl it around, and that's what we're doing again over on my Patreon page. We're having a lot of fun. And I also shared, I'm going to show you some of the colors I used here, but I really talk about my color choices in the Patreon lesson. But I'll let you know, I used a lot of the Terry Ludwig pastels from a set that's, you can see I used a lot of them already, but this is such a great set from Terry Ludwig Pastels. It used to be called the Maggie Price set. I think it's just called Basic Values now, 60 basic value colors. And I also used some Prismacolor new pastels towards the end of the painting to create some of those feathering marks that I wanted to feature again in this lesson over on my Patreon page. So often we don't get creative enough with our mark making, and that's what I cover in the full lesson. And if you would like that full lesson, it's super easy. You just simply become a patron of mine for $5 a month and you unlock hundreds of videos. But the best part is you become part of my Patreon family. I get to see your work. We have lots of games and challenges. It's a beautiful place. And while I got you here, could I ask you to go ahead and click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already? Leave me a comment. I love to hear from you. So let's get back to this. So I'm going to speed up this portion here on the Monet Cafe channel just so you can see this painting come to life. And this is a little example of the feathering technique where I'm literally making linear marks, exaggerated, with directional strokes and gesture. And I layer some of those linear marks with different colors and values on top of each other as the painting progresses. And it's a really fun technique just to create some energy and a sense of life and motion and movement to your painting. And by the way, if you have not experienced my videos or pastel paintings often, they sometimes start out looking rather messy. So if I lose some of you at the beginning of this video, it's because it takes a while to take shape. And that's something that I struggled with a lot when I was first painting. I thought I had to almost create a painting like a paint by number. Paint every leaf and every flower and every petal. And I didn't realize that it's about a layering process. We're building the painting up. I would say from the ground up or from the earth up. And we're often starting with our darkest values and then gradually getting to our lighter values on top, like you're seeing a little bit of with this mark making. And I always love to talk to the beginner artist when I am creating a tutorial. So I just want to talk a little bit while I'm painting here. See how I'm getting some of those dark values in underneath? But the reason is because like so many of my subscribers and patrons and followers, I was busy with life, raising my children, my family, which was my best and most important job, my favorite thing I've ever done. But I always had this desire to be an artist. I did major in graphic design. I had a little bit of art, but not a lot. But I finally found some time when my kids got a little busier in life. And I thought, gosh, I'd really love to learn to paint. And this was back when, gosh, I've been painting, I don't know, close to 20 years now. And this was back when YouTube wasn't as much of a thing. So I was having to search so much to learn these things. And I almost gave up, but I discovered the medium of soft pastels. I loved how user-friendly they were. They don't dry up like oils or acrylics. You don't have all the chemicals, and well, with acrylics you have water, but you have to, if life pulls you away, you got a son that has to get to a football game or, a piano lesson with your daughter. It can get challenging if you're multitasking like we so often do in life. So the medium of soft pastels, I discovered I love the user-friendly aspect about them, but when I was trying to paint with them, my work wasn't looking like some of the pieces that I loved, and I couldn't figure out why. And I literally, like I said, I almost gave up, but I kept on. I'm a little bit persistent like that, and I started learning. It had a lot to do with the products I was using. The pastels and the quality of the pastels matter. I had never tried a sanded surface. I was literally just painting on drawing paper. And so I started to learn a little bit more every time I tried. And then I finally started sharing some of what I was learning when YouTube finally became a thing. And that is how this channel, Monet Cafe, started. So I love sharing with new artists that you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. I made every mistake in the book, and I loved the fact that a few years ago I started my Patreon page, and I could really dive in deep to some more of this information and teaching. I love my Patreon family. So now I'm using some Prismacolor new pastels, the skinny sticks I talked about. Well, I was, but I was making more of those gestural marks, and I'm now finally getting in. Remember how I said we paint from down deep to finally some of the lighter elements on top? We usually work darker to lighter values, and now I'm finally putting in, there's a kind of like a white, almost Queen Anne's lace flower in there. I liked some of these beigey colors rather than stark whites. So I'm adding my lightest values on top, and for a final punch, I often like to add a complementary color, which is a little bit of that same red-violet kind of underpainting that I was doing originally. I'm adding some fun little gestural strokes and mark-making techniques for some of these grasses and leaves on the flowers. And here you can see a lot of my crazy mark-making. I was kind of exaggerating this for this lesson just to exemplify the technique of feathering. And here in the sky, you can see how things eventually just start to blend together as you gradually add more colors and linear marks. And I wanted to stress the product of the Neocolor 2 wax pastels, but I just had to share with you a little bit of the techniques that's over on my Patreon page. So I hope you enjoyed this. I love this feathering technique. The colors ended up being exuberant and vibrant. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Become a patron if you would like all of the extra goodies. And as always, God bless and happy painting.